For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Naomi Sky. How's it going today, Naomi?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk with you. I've been listening to your music all evening or afternoon. It's that weird part of the day where I don't know if it's how long it's actually been evening versus afternoon, where it's just like whatever. But I've been listening to your music for the last several hours, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm excited to sit down and chat with you about everything you got going on. So, but first off, before we jump into the new single, which is dropping tonight at midnight, so a little less than, is that midnight Eastern or Central? Either way, 3.5, 4.5 hours, depending on what time zone you're in. What's kind of your background? What got you into music? You know, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So when I was 5 years old, my dad, he plays the piano. And I remember he was playing the piano one night after work, and I was listening to him, and he improvises sometimes and just comes up with, you know, his own stuff. And I remember as a little girl, I thought it was the coolest thing. So I begged my mom to let me take lessons. And that was really how I got started playing piano. And then I would run around the house singing as a little girl. I asked him to print out lyrics of my favorite songs, stuff like Dancing Queen by ABBA, some Hilary Duff songs. I remember Come Clean was one specifically that I wanted. So, and I got to learn the lyrics, and then I would incorporate the pop music in my piano lessons so that I got to learn some of the songs. And from there, I didn't start taking voice lessons until I was about 13 in middle school, because I had an elementary school teacher. She was my music teacher, and she recommended to wait until my voice matured. So, but singing was always my favorite thing to do. And so up until I was 13, the piano was really the only instruction that I got in music.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on my own, I also did some songwriting and started that when I was about 11, and just kind of used it as like a therapeutic way of like getting my thoughts out on paper, being able to reflect. And music just always has been such a fun way for me to dive into my emotions.
Nice. And then I know you also do some other stuff outside of music. You're like dancing and modeling and all that fun stuff. Is that all like encompassing? Which one, or actually first question, which one of those came first? Did you start singing professionally first, or did you start doing modeling?
Yeah. So the singing professionally and the modeling they basically overlapped, I would say. I started to do some photo shoots in middle school just for local things around my area. And I competed in a couple pageants in both middle school and high school. So I got a lot of experience on the stage through modeling. Mm-hmm. And I did a couple of talent competitions through the modeling competition. So they would have, you know, all the different modeling exercises, I'll say, or stages and shows, and they'd have talent portions in every modeling competition. So I would always choose to sing for those. Yeah. So I had a lot of fun doing that. And I definitely feel like doing the modeling, it kind of helped me with the singing, just getting more comfortable being on stage in front of a crowd and feeling really confident about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. You know, it makes perfect sense because you're obviously on stage singing all the time. So trying to get yourself comfortable with it makes perfect sense. So kind of transitioning back into music, you didn't start singing until your voice matured. And then remind me again, at what point did you start actually writing your own music?
So I started writing my own music when I was 11, and it was just a fun thing that, you know, I did in my free time. But my parents saw that it was something I was really seriously passionate about because, you know, I grew up playing sports too. And my parents wanted me to be as well-rounded as possible, but music was always what I was most drawn to. And they saw that early on. So they did end up sending me to some summer programs too, where I got to do some performance workshops and also songwriting. I did like a week of songwriting.
Nice. Usually I don't jump into this until after, till later in the interview, but since we're on the topic of songwriting, how's obviously your like process of creating music and songwriting in general has changed over the years, but how has it changed over the years? Like,
that's a great question. I think the best way to explain it would be I always write from a stream of consciousness. That's how I describe it to people. And sometimes it's like I'll say a more purposeful stream of consciousness. Like I'm choosing to sit down and take an hour or two to write and see what I can come up with. Mm-hmm. But I always give myself a lot of freedom. And I've done that since I was little. So I'll get in a space where I'm choosing, you know, I'm not going to judge myself. Whatever comes, and then I'll go back and fix it. So that's stayed the same. That technique has stayed the same throughout my solo writing sessions. Yeah. And I think the thing that's really changed is how I use chord progressions and the melody of the song to sometimes I'll do that first now instead of writing the lyrics. Yeah. But my most natural way is definitely to sit down, write lyrics in a stream of consciousness and almost improvise the melody while I'm doing it.
Gotcha. It's interesting because since you'd mentioned that you started playing piano and then you started because you didn't start singing until your voice had matured. Right. It's kind of interesting that you didn't start off initially with just the instrumentation or the melody or the, you know, it's interesting that it's not reversed, where as you kind of got later into your career, you started formulating with lyrics first, you know. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. I think it's really interesting too. I think that shows a lot of when I was little too, one of my favorite things to do was read. And in school, I really liked English class. So I think that shows up and is shown more in the songwriting. But it is kind of funny that, even though I took piano lessons as my first instruction really in music, I tend to, I'll go straight for the lyrics and that'll guide me really with the melody and the chord progressions.
Yeah. That's awesome. So the piano was your first instrument you were introduced to. Did you, as you've kind of gone along, have you picked up any other instruments or?
I started to pick up guitar in high school and I took lessons from a friend and I didn't stick with it. So now I'm back to the point where I'm starting to learn again because it's such a great instrument. It's portable, really, you know, it works in so many ways. You can take it to gigs really easily as opposed to carrying a keyboard. So I'm in the process of relearning the guitar again.
Nice. And that's the interesting thing about guitar, because it's like you could pretty much take it anywhere. You could play it. An acoustic guitar, you could play it anywhere. So if you're out in the middle of the town somewhere, and as long as you got your guitar, if something hits you, you could start technically working on it there if you wanted to. Whereas with like a keyboard, you'd have to like lug this big thing around, and then, that makes sense. So how's the relearning of the guitar been for you?
So far, it's going pretty well. It's interesting because with piano, you know, you don't have that process where your fingers start to hurt a little bit. Yeah. With guitar, you always get that. And I remember in high school too, it took me a little bit to get used to. So it's taking some getting used to again, but I feel like it'll definitely be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I'm not a musician. I don't pretend to be, but I've always kind of said that if I were to ever try and pick up an instrument, it would probably end up having to be the piano, because for me, I'm very visual. So it's like I need to be able to see all the different possible notes in front of me. Whereas guitar, that doesn't make sense to me. Like you got to run with the fret and the different chords. Whereas the piano, it's all right there.
Yeah, I completely understand you. It's really interesting because my friend who was teaching me in high school, he played piano first.
Mhm.
And that it definitely made it easier, even in the lessons with him when I was learning guitar, to kind of translate what I knew from the piano already to guitar. So I definitely recommend, if you want to start an instrument, go with the piano. I think it's a great basis.
And it's one of those things where I think that's why a lot of children, when they're young, if they show interest in music, usually it's piano lessons, because it's all right there and it gives you a good foundation.
That's so true.
So, but let's jump into some of your music, because I know you've got a lot going on. You're working on an album, you got a new single coming out. But before we talk about all that, let's talk about With You, because it's your most recent single. It's the song that everybody can go listen to right now. What's that song all about?
So that song, I wrote it at a time where I was, still in college. I'm graduated now, but I was still in college, and I wanted to feel really empowered about my desires, and not just in a romantic way. The song focuses on a romantic relationship, but my intention with the song was to make people feel empowered about whatever it is that their heart desires. So the song is written in the sense of a romantic relationship. And one of the other ways I was hoping to inspire people with the lyrics was to empower women with their desires too, because I think especially in romantic relationships, at least in the conversations I've had with some of my close girlfriends, there's been a little bit of hesitancy sometimes to initiate intimacy. And, everyone has different comfortable levels of comfortability with different things. But I wanted, my friends and me also just to feel empowered to initiate whatever we wanted to, especially because when you're in a loving romantic relationship, I think both people want to feel desired and cherished and appreciated, loved and adored. And, sometimes people express that through physical intimacy. And so I wanted to use this as an empowerment anthem for that.
Nice. And this song released back in August, correct? Am I
Yes.
end of August?
Yep. August 27th.
Awesome. Well, first off, before we kind of jump into other things outside of the song itself, so this is the second single of the upcoming album, or is this kind of a standalone single of the?
Yes. So this is the second single of the upcoming album. My goal with the album is to showcase all these different sides of myself. And so I felt like this song had a little bit of almost a darker sound than the first song I released, which I felt like was a very brighter, upbeat pop tune.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to show some contrast with the second one.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense, because it's one of those things where with the pandemic kind of going on, I know it's changed everybody's release strategies as far as music. How has the pandemic kind of affected your release strategy as far as when you're going to release stuff, how you're going to release stuff?
It's been interesting because I've been working on Zoom with my producer. He's one of my close friends from college. So we still get to have fun, but it's definitely a different dynamic than it would be if we were working in a studio. And I think sometimes, more ideas or different things pop up in a Zoom session that might not if we were in a studio. So that can definitely prolong the process a little bit. I think also it's made me think more about how intentional I want to be with what I'm releasing and like what kind of a statement I'm making with the song.
Gotcha. And then what's been the hardest part about working remotely through Zoom while you've been going through this whole process of the album?
The most challenging part for me has been starting to record the vocals on my own, because we'll do it through the Zoom session. So my producer, his name's Quentin, he's really in control of all the recording, but I still have the full setup on my end, which is the first time I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So that's been a new challenge, definitely.
Gotcha. So have you been having to pretty much learn on the fly basic production etiquette?
Yeah, a little bit. So the way we've been working is some of the vocals we had recorded pre-pandemic, luckily.
Hmm.
So a lot of our sessions up until more recently had been focused on the mixing and mastering, and we would, I'd be there with him while he was really doing most of that,
Mhm.
because he gets all the credit for my production. He's so amazing, and yeah, so now I've been more recently starting to try to figure out, the different recording programs, and yeah, on the fly, pretty much learning how to do that and like what, different levels mean and stuff like that. He's really still in charge of all the mixing and mastering though. I have not done that. I give him full credit. He does an amazing job. I'm very grateful to have him.
Yeah. Well, it's he can tell you what to do, but if you don't know what he's talking about, then like if he's telling you, oh, you got to punch the gain up, or like
Exactly.
whatever it is, if you don't know how to do that or what that means, then you're not really doing him any good.
Oh,
So
yes, that's a huge part of it too. It's definitely been helpful, I think, that I had a friendship with him before we started working together because, just like friends do, you'll talk about stuff, you get interested in, your friend's interests. So even when we started working together, I would ask him questions about what he was doing on the computer when we were, in the studio. And so he definitely started explaining things to me, I think, earlier on maybe than some people, which is cool. It's definitely helped me a lot. And especially more recently when I've started recording, it's come in a lot of handy.
yeah, absolutely. I've had the similar situation with my audio or my co-host and audio engineer Jeff, when we were doing like live acoustic sets. While I was waiting for him to mix the audio, I would sit there with him and just start watching how he does things and ask him questions.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now we're kind of at a point where for up until earlier this year, we weren't really getting together as much because of COVID and whatnot. And like I work a full-time job and they're like, oh, we don't really want you traveling, all that, so it was cool. And so I would have this basic knowledge of how to mix audio. So I was able to do a lot of this stuff myself, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's helpful too. Yeah, now you know.
Yeah, it is. So the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that for the first single that you released, Let's Dive In, you released a music video, but you didn't do one for With You. Is that something that you're still considering, or is?
Yes, so that's a project that's in the works. There will be a music video for With You for anyone
Nice.
who's been wondering. Yeah.
Awesome. I just taking a shot in the dark, and sometimes it pays off,
Yeah, yeah, great question.
So what's kind of your process? We'll talk about music videos then for a little bit. When you're like working on music videos, what's kind of your creative process and outlet? Do you like just have a basic idea and then let somebody else that knows how to shoot and edit and let them take it, or what's kind of the process when it comes to you in music videos?
Yeah, so for the first one, I actually edited that myself. It was during the pandemic, middle of the pandemic last year, and I needed something to really kind of pick me up, I guess. And so I took that on just for fun, and I had no idea how it was going to turn out. I actually had one of my best friends from my hometown film it for me too. So it was, we went and shot the whole thing, and it was a really fun night, and I was so grateful for her help. And then, I took that project on, and I had fun editing it. It was a great challenge to have, definitely during the pandemic too. But my goal for every music video is to, up my game or improve, whether it's with the storyline or the quality with everyone. So now for this next one, I'm taking it to a company I found that I really trust in, and I have an idea, but they're really going to form it more for me.
Nice. So you're really stepping your game up, and the second one's going to be completely different than the first one.
Yes, exactly.
Nice. That's really cool. That's what this pandemic is kind of, I hope, has taught a lot of people, that because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean you can't do it.
Exactly.
Everybody, at least initially, you were stuck in the house for 6-9 months, depending on like where you lived and stuff. and couldn't really go anywhere. And it's like, what'd you do? Just sit there, or did you learn how to do something? I know a lot of musicians like yourself that learned how to video edit because they had new music and they wanted to do music videos. So they learned how to shoot, they learned how to edit, and it's really cool, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely fun, I think, too, because as a musician, it's like I'm thinking about the visuals that go along with what I'm creating. You know, when I'm writing the story and stuff, there's always things that I'm picturing. But it was cool to really think about all of the different elements of a music video. And I think, too, whenever I've learned something on my own, like, you know, whether it was because of the pandemic last year or just working as an independent artist, it makes me even more grateful than when I do collaborate with someone else, because I kind of know a little bit of how much work and effort goes into their part.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for this next music video, you're going to kind of take more of a hands-off approach and just let the company, right?
Yeah. So we're forming the idea together. Like, they're running, I'll say, different scenes by me before we shoot anything. But yeah, I'm taking a little bit more of a hands-off approach, because I really do think that when you get a lot of different heads together, sometimes you can create the best product.
Yeah. Or as long as as long as it's like set in or it's in writing, or it's known who's the final say so. Because
Yes.
you'll also find yourself in a situation if you have too many, I hate saying this phrase, but too many cooks in the kitchen.
That's also true.
And it's just like, okay, then you got people just kind of doing whatever they want. But no, it seems like you've got a good start, and you're going to have a very, very busy time moving forward with the new music video, the new single that we're about to talk about, and the upcoming album. Taking a lot on this year, aren't you?
Yes, I figured. I feel like, especially with last year sitting around for most of the year in the house, it's definitely been a gift to be busier. You know, it's a challenge, but it's also a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. As I don't feel like last year, I don't feel like I took any time off.
Okay.
I didn't really go anywhere, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah.
You know, so this year, being able to travel, it's just kind of like, oh, wait, now I have to figure in, like, I was really busy last year, just with like everything kind of going on. And then this year, being able to travel, adding in travel time to my already busy schedule, it's like, oh, now I really have no time. That's interesting. So, and I'm sitting here at work today and I'm like, man, why am I so tired? Oh, because you stayed up till 3 a.m. working on a video project. That's why.
Yep. Everything's interconnected, all overlaps. And
Yep, absolutely. But let's jump into your new single coming out tonight at midnight, Heart on My Sleeve. What can you tell us about this song? Yeah,
I'm super excited about releasing this one. It's all about how vulnerability can feel scary. When I was a freshman in college, I started to realize that I was not the best at opening up to people. I was the friend that a lot of people would go to if they needed advice, and I realized how beneficial that was to my friendships with people, and at the time, a romantic relationship I had, because I saw how, you know, sharing something that's really personal, whether it's a secret or just something that someone's going through emotionally, it can deepen the connection. And so I saw that with how other people were opening up to me. And I started to slowly open up to some of my close friends and the guy that I was seeing at the time. But I noticed that it seemed like I had a harder time with it. And it was something that I would talk to my friends about here and there. And over the course of college, I feel like I really learned a lot of lessons about vulnerability and how it can be a beautiful thing. And as scary as it can feel to let people in, I think it's definitely worth it, because when you realize, or when I've realized that I have, you know, a bunch of people really supporting me, that feeling there, I don't think there's anything like that.
Yeah. I'm starting to pick up a theme across all your music that you're very introspective.
Yes.
and that you're very emotionally driven when it comes to music, which I mean, I guess all music's to some degree is emotionally driven, but it just seems like a lot of your stuff is very introspective. So.
Yeah, I really use music as a way to reflect on my emotions. I think especially when I was younger too, I'm the older sister, and I think just how my personality tends to be, I'm a little introverted and also a little extroverted.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that combination and always wanting, just even as a little girl, to hear what was going on in other people's lives, I think music has always been my safe place for diving into my own emotions and really getting to know myself and figuring out, oh wait, what am I going through? You know, kind of taking a step back and giving myself that time to reflect.
Yeah. And have you found that this whole time through the pandemic has helped or hurt you when it comes to like being more introspective?
I think it's done a little bit of both,
Okay.
ironically, because when I was in college, it was easy because I had so many people around me. It was easy to start to open up to people like my roommates and my best friends. You know, they were maybe right down the street or a few blocks down. So it was really easy to find people to talk to and connect with in person. And I think the pandemic, it posed a little bit of a challenge in the sense that it gave me all the time to be reflective, but then that vulnerability and opening up to other people, it took on a whole new, way of doing that, because instead of doing it in person and getting maybe the shoulder to cry on if I needed it, it was over the phone or over FaceTime. So it looked different. And I think that was another like separate challenge for me. I feel like I'm now in a good place with it, but it was a little bit challenging at first, definitely.
Yeah. And that kind of brings back the point you made about being a little introverted and extroverted, where you're extroverted to the point that you show your emotions, but maybe a little bit more introverted in other areas. I feel like I'm the opposite.
Okay.
So it's like, to me, the pandemic, it was like, okay, I get to kind of retreat into not my safe space, but just kind of like retreat home. And I can kind of decide, okay, do I like myself? Why don't I like myself? What do I need to change to like myself? And like, I don't include a lot of people in that thought process. So, that's just kind of interesting point that I somehow came to. So
yeah, no, that is true. It is interesting because one of my best friends and I, we've FaceTimed almost every week since we were separated in the pandemic. We were in the same place, so we would only really see each other when it started. But then since, we were in different cities, we started FaceTiming, and she and I have had this pact that she's like my second sister. So I have a younger sister, and then I have my best friend Faith. And since we started FaceTiming, we agreed, we have all these things that we want to work on. And so we've kind of kept each other accountable. So that's been really cool for me, because that's been the first time I think that I've had someone else help me stay accountable. And it's definitely helped me stick to my goals for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to have somebody that help you stay accountable and isn't going to take any of your bull. Because like I fall into that, where I have some friends that they'll just kind of let me spit my bull, if you will. Like, oh, I couldn't do that today because of this. And it's like, no, you couldn't do that today because you're lazy. Like, I've got friends now that'll tell me that straight up.
Yeah, they'll call you out.
Yeah. They're like, no, I watched you on Facebook all day. You did it because you didn't do this because you were lazy. I'm like, I can't help it. I'm sorry. So yeah, it's
important. It's good to have those friends who can call you out too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, so for your new single, are you looking at possibly doing a music video for that as well, or is that not kind of?
Yeah. There's also some thought about a potential music video there too. The storyline, I have so many different ideas, so I'll definitely be getting some help from that with friends, family, and different people's opinions. But yeah, I'm really excited to just dive into all these creative projects. I feel like they all light me up in different ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's good. Like the fact that you're so motivated is amazing. Like it's just like if the pandemic's done anything positive in the world, it's either it's helped people get out of their shell and get motivated and realize, oh, I've got to do this. Like now's the time. Or it, so that's always good that you're right, especially right now, you're in this creative prime, if you will, coming out of
Yeah.
the pandemic when next or late the end of this year, next year, hopefully shows and like all these good opportunities will start coming through. And just there's so many musicians and people that are hitting their stride right now that are just
Mhm.
next year is going to be an insane year with new music release.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited. Yeah, because even this year, I feel like there's been a
Mhm.
lot of great stuff that people have come out with.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like stuff that maybe they've held on to because they didn't want to release it during the height of the pandemic. And
Yeah.
then, of course, just new music in general, because musicians are creative creatures that they're always going to be writing or they're always going to be noodling around on the piano, guitar, bass, like whatever their instrument of choice is.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, like, even though they've got this music that they've been sitting on because for whatever reason they didn't want to release it during the pandemic or they couldn't release it or it wasn't 100% finished, like whatever the reason is,
Mhm.
just because they've been sitting on that doesn't mean they haven't been working on the next two albums just because they've had the time.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
2022, 2023 is going to be really interesting because you're going to have all these musicians that they're going to release an EP, an LP, or just a whole bunch of singles
Mhm.
because sitting on their hard drive ain't doing anyone any good. So,
Exactly. I think one of the things too that's honestly helped me stay so motivated this year is my grandma passed away last year at the end of the year, towards the end of the year. So, and seeing her and just my family and I all being together last year, at the end of her life, I think it just showed me how valuable and how short life can seem too,
yep.
and how much every day can count and matter. And that we can do so much, there's so much possibility. She also, in the sense of love, was very inspiring to me because she outlived her first husband, and also she remarried and then outlived him as well. And and she found love a third time and she was with him and they had a beautiful, like, good, I think it was 10-year marriage.
Oh.
Before they both passed. So it was really inspirational, I think, too, just to kind of, obviously it was really hard to lose her, but I think she's ended up being a source of inspiration for me in the sense of I want to chase my dream and I want to do as much as I can while, I have the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, I'm sorry for your loss. I went through a similar loss earlier this year, and I had a very similar experience where my loss motivated me because so it was my mother. She passed away from cancer.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
And for the longest time, while I was doing this live and amplified thing, it was, okay, this is cool, but don't give up your day job, play it safe. And, so it was really hard for me to gain her trust that this was something that I really wanted to do. And this was like my passion and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then in her final weeks and months, she flipped a 180, and like a lot of my podcasts and interviews got her through some really, really dark times.
Wow.
So, and she told me about a week before she died, don't give up on any of this. So,
yeah. Wow. I'm sorry for your loss too. It's such an ironic thing how sometimes that darkness or like a negative, a really negative experience or emotion, a loss, grief, it can also do the opposite and trigger, inspiration or motivation too.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I firmly believe that with something negative, you can always draw something positive out of it. And I think in both of our situations, we were able to do that. So
yeah, definitely.
but I didn't mean to kind of push it down this road, because I feel like I keep telling myself I'm not going to bring it up unless it gets naturally brought up in the conversation.
Right.
It's like every podcast, it's like, oh, I got to go down this emotional trail again, but it's all good.
I was going to say, it's interesting because I think one of the things I've noticed about the pandemic is it made people a lot more open to talking about some of, I'll say, the deeper stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really cool to see because everyone goes through it.
Yep.
But I think at least pre-pandemic, not everyone would talk about it as openly. And I think just having maybe something that was just so frustrating universally for everyone, maybe just really brought us all together. But it's cool.
And the one thing the pandemic taught me was I'm not as introverted as I thought I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because after 6 months of not really going anywhere or talking to anyone or seeing anyone, the most introverted person is going to be like, yo, somebody, hello,
Yeah, that's so true. You crave the social connection.
Yeah, we're all social creatures. So even if you're the most introverted of introverted, at some point you're going to want to talk to somebody or see somebody, so
exactly. It's important. Socialization is important.
Absolutely. So let's kind of talk about the upcoming album. It's a work in progress. Obviously, you're releasing the third single for it tonight. At what point did you kind of decide that you were ready to release a full-length album?
So during my senior year of college, which started in fall 2019, there was so many emotions I had, I think, about where I was in my life, love life, just about to be graduating. And so I ended up writing a series of mostly love songs at the time. And they had a very similar theme. All of them focused on some aspect of vulnerability a little bit.
Yeah.
And, with different topics, I'll say, is the focus of that. But it all explored just how it is as me, like, to, explore vulnerability and feel like, this is just a human thing. It's not so bad.
Yeah.
So when I realized I had all these songs that really went together, I was taking them all to my producer, Quentin, and told him about my idea. He was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, very encouraging and supportive. And I took some of the songs to my voice teacher and got a lot of positive feedback from her too. So I think sharing the songs with people and telling them, like, this is my idea. What do you think? Do you think these kind of go together, and getting that positive feedback and support, that definitely encouraged me to really go for it.
Yeah. You kind of touched on this, but what went into the song selection process? Did you just have stuff written, or did you specifically write for the album? What kind of went into the song selection process?
So it ended up that all of the songs that I was writing, it was really just my way of processing and healing things that I had experienced with love and romance. And I think just as I went on writing for my healing process, I realized, wait, these really can all go together. So I guess I was writing and I didn't necessarily have the album concept in mind, but once I had written all of the songs, I realized, oh, wait, this would be really cool as one full project.
Gotcha. So it was just by pure chance, like you were writing for your own personal health and well-being. And then as you kind of got to a point, it was like, oh, wait, could work as a whole project itself.
Yeah. That's exactly how it went. And actually, I was a music major in college, and I had switched my major completely to communications. So it was really interesting because in my senior year of, when everyone's looking for jobs and figuring out what the next step is going to be, I came to this place, especially after writing all these songs, of, I really do just want to go for it as a musician and try it out, see where it goes. And I think especially having this full project, that really, I think, pushed me over the edge of, let me just try this and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so as far as your music goes, what keeps you motivated right now?
I think the thing that keeps me motivated the most is the release or the I'll say the feedback, and also from others, and also just the release or like the celebration type of feeling that I get from performing.
Mhm.
I think that that's been, I'll say, a form of therapy for me for so many years, and it's really been very effective, that getting the feedback from others, and whether it's complimenting my lyrics or my voice, whatever it is, I think it just keeps me going. It keeps me wanting to share more stuff, and especially the originals, as opposed like covers. Definitely, like, I think the feedback from others really keeps me feeling motivated and inspired.
Mhm.
But I think the personal stuff, sharing the songs that I write, I think like the idea that I could be helping someone, even if it's just one person, with something that I wrote that might hit home for them. Because I feel like, especially when we're in a place of, sadness or post breakup, for example, people go to music because it can make them feel better. It makes them feel like they're not alone. And if
Mhm.
I can do that for one person, the idea that I could help someone, like music's helped me, that really keeps me going.
Nice. Was there a moment, whether it be early on in your career or later on, that you realized you were destined or meant to do this?
I think the moment that happened was after I had switched my major. So after I made I'll say, quote unquote, career change, or in my head, what at the time I thought was going to be a career change.
Yeah.
And I completely let go of any idea of pursuing this dream as a musician. I think, ironically, any fear or confusion that I had of, who was I going to be as an artist, and how was I going to, leave a message or just exhibit this artistry in all the different ways with clothing and, the music and lyrics and melody. I think all of that fear dissipated. And once that fear dissipated, I started to remember how much I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And then was there a song that do you remember like the first song that spoke to you on a different level, that kind of gave or helped, maybe either it helped get you to that point that you realized, oh, I'm meant to do this, or yeah.
Yeah, it was a song. It's called Red Roses. I haven't released it yet,
Nope.
but the idea is about, like, the message that I'm really sending with the song is being hopeful in love. And I wrote it at a time when I was going through a breakup,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't sure what the future held for me in love, what that was going to look like. And I remember showing it to a couple of my guy friends. And one of the things I've always thought was interesting is I've had a close relationship with both my parents. So I think when it comes to friends, I've been close to both guys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
But I always notice that some of the feedback I get from guys, like, guys will not say something if they don't mean it.
Yeah.
And so I think getting feedback, like really positive feedback from my guy friends on this song, and them like telling me that they thought it, was really good, and things along that line with, more specific feedback,
Mm-hmm.
really made me realize, oh, I think I really have something with the song.
Nice. It's always interesting because guys tend to be a little bit more brutally honest.
Yeah, definitely.
But it is what it is, I guess, at this point. So kind of jumping back towards the album, do you have a tentative release date or anything like that for it yet, or is it still just 2022?
It's still just 2022. My goal is to have all of, I'll say, my next, I think we're going to do at least 2 more after Heart on My Sleeve singles.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to have both of those out by May 2022, so that I can hopefully be releasing the album maybe next fall.
Okay.
Fingers crossed that, that everything works with all the different layers.
Is it not why do you think is it taking so long? Because obviously with the technical aspect of everything, that's kind of the reason why, having to do everything remotely and whatnot. But was it always the thought to kind of take your time with this album, or did the pandemic have a lot to do with it? Do you feel like if you were able to go in studio with your producer, it would be done a lot way faster?
Yeah, I think if I had the chance to be in the studio with my producer, it might have come along faster.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely believe that like things happen for a reason though. And I feel like the pandemic gave me the opportunity to think and get more intentional about the art and the message I wanted to send. And it's definitely been helpful in terms of music videos too, because I wasn't necessarily thinking as much about the visuals. You know, I think sometimes as a musician, like we think about the music first. So being kind of forced almost to take more time to release stuff because of the pandemic and different, technology issues or challenges, it's ended up being a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we talked about earlier, every negative thing, you can always try and pull something positive out of it. So that's a really good, healthy way to look at it, is because, you're kind of have that opportunity to like really take a look at everything you're doing and just flush it out, I guess is the best way to phrase it out.
Yes, 100%.
So I'm sure everybody will be really excited to listen to the album once it's out, but they can get a taste of that tonight at midnight, depending on does it come out at midnight in every time zone? I've been trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
Because I work with musicians from all over the place. Is it like midnight at their specific time zone, or is it of just straight Eastern time zone? I'm still trying to figure that out.
So I think I've used DistroKid to release songs, and my last release, my best friend, she now is located in Hawaii. So that's 6 hours behind Eastern Standard Time. So my last release, I learned that it comes out at Eastern Standard Time midnight because she was able to listen at 6 p.m. in Hawaii.
Nice. That's really cool. Okay. Now I have an answer to my
Yes, but it might depend on the distribution service.
Yes.
That's the only little
because
star.
What was throwing me for a loop was like a lot of the international artists we work with, they'll be promoting a single. And so like Australia, for instance, because that's like, I think 15, 16 hour time difference. When it releases there, it's still not available here. So So I think there's something to that, but
there definitely is. It's probably also, I'm guessing, the distribution service that they use too. There's so many like distribution services, even just within independent artists. I can't imagine if you're signed to a label or anything like that, what that looks like too.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's probably madness. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, so kind of stepping away from music for a little bit, when you need to escape from everything and just kind of take some time for yourself, what are some of the hobbies you like? What do you kind of do to escape from everything?
One of my absolute favorite things is to dance. That especially when in school music was feeling really stressful for me, dance helped me look at music in a different way and enjoy it. Still, I found a way to enjoy it through dance when I was struggling to enjoy it, I would say. And besides dance, I like working out in general. I'm a runner. That's a great stress relief for me. And more recently, I got a puppy at the end of the year last year. So she has been amazing. When I'm having a rough day, I just go over, play with her. And I think having a dog definitely reminds me how good life is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I've been telling myself for the last 4.5 years. I want to get is a puppy or a dog.
Oh, yes.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I travel way too much.
Right.
It's like, that's not fair to the dog or me or anybody else that I'd need to go watch it, because I'm gone for a week. It's just not fair to anybody. So
unless you get one of those smaller dogs and you can take them on the plane with you. I mean, I don't know if you want that option, but
yeah, that has been a thought. That's what my parents did. They had a small dog and so that it would be easier to travel. And if they needed to get on an airplane, it would be, easier to do so.
Right.
But it just never worked out like they wanted to. And it's just like, all right, yeah, I'm good there.
You're going to learn from them.
Yeah, pretty much. So if I get a dog, it's going to be something that's just kind of chill. And because I don't fly all that often, I do more driving than anything because I like driving. Like, for whatever reason, that's the weird thing. Like, when we were growing up, my dad was a pilot, and I always preferred the trips that we drove just because I don't know why.
Well, no, I think there's a lot of pluses to driving. Like, you get to see all the different cities, and there's so many beautiful, like, geographic, like, landscapes when you're passing, like, mountains. There's all these different views, definitely. But I think that airplanes flying doesn't give it the same.
Yeah, it's a completely different experience, and you get to witness and be a part of different communities, even though if it's just for the 5 minutes that you're at the local gas station, you get to experience a little bit of Biloxi, Mississippi, if you're driving through there, and like all these places that you wouldn't normally get to experience.
Yes, that's so true too.
Which I absolutely love that. Like, just being 4 a.m. and stopping at a random gas station in Mississippi is just like, yes, I love doing this. So you get to meet so many of the locals.
That's true. Yeah.
You brought up that one of the things you like to do is dance, which makes sense because one thing that I noticed in your music video was a little bit of choreography, and going through your website, it's mentioned a couple of different times that you like dancing.
Yes.
But one of my hidden guilty pleasures is watching dance movies, like movies that are based around.
Dance movies are the best.
What is your favorite dance movie?
Oh my gosh. I would have to say there's two. That's high for me. Okay. Step Up and High Strung. I don't know if I don't
know High Strung, but I know Step Up.
Step Up. I remember watching it for the first time, and I feel like watching people move and just do their thing, like when dance is their thing, it feels so inspirational to me because, like, I can feel the energy radiating off of, even through the TV of how much they love what they're doing. And I feel like just watching people be active too is so motivational.
Yeah.
And then High Strung, I love that movie because it shows both the challenges that a dancer and a musician go through. And so it's like two of my favorite passions meet in one movie.
Yep, absolutely. So Step Up, I would say probably Step Up 2, like out of the, what is there now, 5 Step Up movies? Yeah, I think Step Up 2 is probably my favorite, but that's just because I grew up on the south side of Chicago. And so the more urban style of dancing speaks a little bit more to me. But I would say You Got Served is like the most random movie. It's a terrible movie in general, but like the dance sequences are amazing. Just like, if you sit there, the acting is terrible. Nobody in this movie can act. But
oh gosh,
I'm assuming you haven't seen it just by your kind
I have not. Okay. No, I'm gonna have to look it up now and watch it.
Just like watch it. Like it's about a bunch of dance crews that are battling. They get into a not to give away the movie, but they get into a battling competition.
Okay.
And
as dancers do.
Yeah. And so but the choreography and all the dance scenes are amazing, but like you just sit there and watch the acting and you don't believe anything that they're saying just because it's all a bunch of professional dancers that just decided one day they were going to make a movie. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then actually the remake of Footloose,
also a great one.
Everybody gets mad at me. They're like, no, the original is better. And it's like, no, the remake's better because they can actually dance. The whole movie's based around dancing. You're not cutting to random smash cuts of Kevin Bacon just moving his feet to try and stay on rhythm. So
I have to say, I love the classic, original Footloose. But yeah, I do think that the new one, there's a lot of pros that, the older one doesn't have.
Yeah.
Like more dancing.
Yep. And actually good dancing. But it is what it is. I did not expect this conversation to happen, but I am so happy. I'm gonna when we jump off this interview, I'm probably gonna go watch some dance movie just to complete.
They're the best. Dance movies are the absolute best.
Yes, absolutely. But I don't want to keep you too much longer. If people want to check out your music or any upcoming shows, do you have any upcoming shows first off before we get into that part? Or
I don't yet. I have virtual shows coming up, which I will be posting and, advertising for on my socials, but I have not gotten any live performances scheduled yet. We're saying yet.
Yeah, yet is the keyword there.
Yes.
In an ideal world, when the pandemic isn't an issue, how often would you like to be performing live shows?
I'd love to be performing at least once a month. I think being in front of a crowd and getting experience, really. I think that it's so important because I definitely notice as an audience member when someone feels comfortable on stage. And I think that the more comfortable you can be performing, the better performer you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if anybody wants to check out any of the upcoming virtual shows or the new single when it drops here in a few hours, where's the best place for them to do that?
You can go to my website, which is www.itsnaomisky.com. And there are links to all of my social pages on there, my Instagram, which is @officiallynaomisky, my, Twitter account, my Facebook page, and I'm on all streaming platforms. So whatever your favorite is, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Pandora, I'm everywhere. So if you just search Naomi Sky, you will find me.
Awesome. Well, before I let you go, I've got to ask you a very important question. Usually It's very controversial or it's very embarrassing, but I'm going to let you decide tonight what it is. So the question I have for you, what is your current guilty pleasure song that nobody would expect that you're listening to right now?
Oh, my current guilty pleasure song. That's such a good question. Oh gosh, I'm thinking to my playlist. What have I been playing every day? I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure song necessarily, but I'm really into some spiritual music.
Okay.
I think a lot of musicians might think it's a little out there maybe. But there's this one girl, her artist name is Activation. Mm-hmm. And she has a bunch of different playlists or songs. She's an EP, a bunch of different stuff out there. And they're not all affirmation based, but they all have, different. They are affirmation based. I feel like maybe that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
So I listen to, I'll just put her on shuffle and it's very calming to me, very relaxing.
Nice. Hey, that works, Perfect.
Yeah. If it works, it works.
And then to flip it on their head, this is the first time I'm trying this. I'm going to give you one free question to ask me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What got you into podcasting?
This is actually, I don't know if I've ever really told this story before. That's so basically what got me in, I'll answer it in two parts because what got me into this podcast and what got me into podcasting originally are two different stories. But what got me into this podcast was my co-host Jeff. He had a band that was coming. I was living in Roswell, New Mexico. He had a band coming into town, and we were originally, when we started Live and Amplified, it was just straight like live acoustic sessions. That's all we did. And the band that was coming into town, they're like, hey, we're coming from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Roswell, New Mexico. We're going to get there like an hour and a half before showtime. So we don't have time to do 2 setups, all that fun stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. I still want to work with you. Let me ponder this. And my buddy was like, hey, why don't we just do an interview, like set up, live stream it, take 20 minutes, and we'll just do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, cool. And so we did one live stream as like a podcast. We weren't calling it a podcast, but that's ultimately what it ended up becoming.
Okay.
And it did so well. And then we had another musician reach out like, hey, I saw this thing you did with this band. I'm coming to Roswell in 2 weeks. Can we do that?
Oh,
then,
whoa.
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's what got me into this podcast. And then what got me into podcasting originally was I was interning for a baseball team, and I would hear all these stories about like all the craziness that would go on while they're on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think anybody was telling these stories or had a platform to tell these stories. And so I just started interviewing like players on this team that I was interning for. And
cool.
It just ended up becoming a podcast. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Baseball is such a fun sport. I got to be the manager in high school of the baseball team. My whole family's super into baseball, so I've always been into baseball. It's awesome.
Are you a Phillies fan?
I guess technically, yes. I've changed over the years. At one point, I was born in Arlington, Virginia. So at one point when I was a Washington Nationals fan for a little bit. And then I switched to the Phillies because they won the World Series.
Okay.
But everyone in my family has a different team. My dad's an Orioles fan. My grandpa and my cousin and uncle, they are Indians fans. Okay. So we're very mixed over here.
I can't talk to your cousin and uncle because I'm a White Sox fan.
Right. They hate you too.
And so I was watching the game before the podcast, and I was so mad at the outcome of the game that I almost texted you and said, I'm not in the mood to do this podcast anymore.
Oh my gosh.
That's how, I was so mad at because I was talking so much smack at work today because living in Texas, I live about 3 hours from Houston. So there's a lot of Houston fans at work. And so I was talking so much smack at work. I was like, during our Zoom meetings, I had a video of the last time the White Sox and Astros played in the playoffs, which is when the White Sox won the World Series. And so I just had that playing in my video background all day. And then obviously they lose today. And I'm like, well, now I'm going to go into work tomorrow and I'm going to have to eat a bunch of crow because I talk so much smack, but it's okay. We ended up doing the podcast. It was great. I'm happy.
Well, I'm glad that you showed up and that it's just, I've had so much fun on here.
I don't usually take sports that seriously. It's fun and I get into it, but for whatever reason today, I was just so mad at the outcome. But once again, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute blast sitting here to chat with you. And I look forward to chatting with you again down the road when you do get the full album and you have a firm release date. We can get you back on here to talk about it a little bit more. And I'm really excited to see how things progress for you throughout the next year and moving forward. So
thank you so much. Yeah, I had so much fun on here chatting with you too. And I would love to be back again. Awesome.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you guys later.